actually, before I do that, let's see. So guys, so we're talking about the bio-well today. And what the bio-well is this little box right here. It's it measures this photonic imaging, right? And it's a camera. This is actually a camera. And inside here, it's hard to see. You can see a little shiny bit. That is the lens. That is the lens in there. And so all of the data that you're going to see once I start showing you the software, it comes from what this camera reads, and it's based on Kirlian photography. Back, early 1800s, late 1700s, where like you've seen the pictures of probably like a leaf that's been cut off, and then there's a charge that's applied to a metal plate underneath, and then you see the energy around the leaf. Or they cut off a piece of the leaf, and then you still see the image of the leaf, that was there, to begin with. And so this is based on that initial concept. And so when we're using this camera, there's this little piece that goes in here, and you stick your finger in. Just like that, it measures all 5 fingers. You stick your finger in, and it's just getting like the fingerprint, as if you were going to be fingerprinted to, you don't want to go to jail, but if you're going to get fingerprinted, right? And so when it does that, it's reading the energy from each of the meridians. So this is based on traditional Chinese medicine. It is based on it reads the energy from the meridians in each of the fingers. And so the only data that this technology doesn't get are the meridians that start in the feet, but that's only a few meridians, and this gets all the core ones. So endocrines, organs, body parts, everything that's really really important in that way. And so, not that the others aren't important, it's just the technology right now is purely designed for fingers, right? And so then before we get started, or once we get started going, before there's a session, I always have to calibrate this box. So this box right here is actually reading all the energy in the room. It's reading EMF from my phone, from my printer, from my laptop. It's reading my energy, if I'm nervous, if I'm calm, if there's multiple people in here, if there's a storm system outside. So every time I'm going to be doing start my sessions in my room, I'm going to have to calibrate this so that it calibrates to all of the energy in the room. And say I was doing sessions throughout the day and atmospheric changes were going on, like a big thunderstorm was coming in, I would have to recalibrate this multiple times, because the energy of the thunderstorm will come in and change all of the energy distribution in the room. This is all based, it's the concept, everything is energy. Everything starts with energy, everything ends with energy, and everything interacts with energy. And there are other technologies that I'm going to be demonstrating, not today, but another day, that read the energy of space, that you can do all sorts of interesting stress testing, read the energy of water, living water. Like, there's so many interesting other aspects to things. But just know the calibration is really, really important every time, so that you get the most accurate results that you can get for the energy that is currently in the space. So that's the what I was explaining there. And it's this little tool right here that calibrates. It touches with this little metal to the glass, and then I will show you on the software how that ultimately shows up. So now I'm going to switch over to
remote, Palace.
What?
How do you do it remote if it requires a finger?
Yeah, so remote, it would, so say for example, we were going to be doing work together, or so once I get into showing you, demoing things, I'll be expanding more on all the different ways this can be utilized. But the simple answer to your question is, you would have to have this box. You would have to have the camera right now. And I would create a, like Netflix, how you can have a family of 5 and each person has their, you pay for each person to have access to the Netflix, right? I would have access to the database for you paying for like that license. And then I would teach you how to do the scans. I would just teach you how to do scans of the fingerprints. And then that information, the scans would load into my database. Then I would do all the readings and generate the reports and do all the things oh, here's Gary. Great. Do all the things on the back end. So with this,
Real quick, it does require a human touch. So to
yes,
speak. Yeah, okay. So
so with this particular technology, where it stands right now, it does require a human.
which is great, but also challenging. Yeah.
Yes and no, it just depends on how I would be setting things up, right? So like if we were going to be doing work together, for example, and you wanted to utilize this for your clients, then you don't have to go through all the training, but you would learn how to do the scans, and then that would be like a subset for the thing.
But what I mean is the majority of my clients are virtual.
Yeah, so it depends, right? It's dependent on how you ultimately, want to use this, and are they in
Yeah.
person, not in person, and groups or whatever, right? So, but yeah, that's a good question. So where it is right now, you do have to be in person, physically touching the camera. But there's, like I said, there's a whole vast array of base partnerships to do this kind of work. So, what I didn't mention, so with this camera here, when it's reading the energy coming from the meridians, it's getting in contact with the electrons, right? The electrons that are pulsing through us, and the electrons then convert to photons, which turn into photonic light, which is emanating from the body. And so ultimately what this is reading is the photonic light, the level of photonic light that's being emanated from. That's the purest form of energy available, right? It is the purest essence of who and what we are. So, good, that's Taya. Awesome. So let those guys get in. All right. So then I'm going to screen share, and I will show you the software. So for an example, I did a calibration earlier, as you can see right here at 1937 hours. And what the initial calibration does is it shows me right here that when I'm looking at organs imbalance and disbalance, I just need everything to zero out. And it tells me that the data is as clean as it can be right now. It will read a little bit of energy around here in the room. It's not relevant, to the calibration, as long as all of these numbers are zeroed out here. And so right here, when we're seeing what you're seeing right here, this is the biofield. This is the actual biofields that you guys have heard about, that shamans work with, that energy medicine practitioners work with. People talk about, the auric layer, the mental, supramental, all of that. Like ultimately, they're all wrapped up into these layers of energy here. Now, the energy isn't discussed in that way, but just know that that's what it's all wrapped into. And so for the ideal scan for somebody that is very healthy, nothing wrong, it's going to look like this right here. It's very balanced. It's a nice the ombre, it moves through the colors right here. There's no big shootouts. Like I will show you, a shootout would be like here. This is actually this is an advanced Qigong healer that I had the opportunity to scan when I was down in Tampa, not Tampa, where was I? Orlando, the other week. And it's interesting because I'll tell you a little more about healers and why the energy fields go like this. But when I talk about shootouts, this is a very imbalanced energy system, right? When you compare this, it's all erratic, very incoherent. When you look here, it's very smooth, very coherent, right? It's not erratic. So when we're doing energy medicine, when we're doing any kind of healing, ultimately, like using drugs, using energy medicine, doing mental health, doing health coaching, how you eat, what you drink, what you're ultimately looking to do is create a balanced biofield in this way. When you're like Johnny for Dispenza, when he's doing all of this work and moving through the different phases of, the brain waves, and you get into gamma and you get into that place where you create that elixir in the blood, ultimately what's happening is we're balancing our biofield to such a heightened place that it becomes impenetrable for the most part to anything out there, right? This means we are whole, we are healthy, we are protected, and the things that can come in and impact us, it becomes more and more difficult for us to become out of balance, because this shows like the truest nature of the heart-brain coherence, right? Which is what he talks about, and the balancing of the energy centers. So anyway, this is really, really healthy and balanced. And obviously this is calibrated in the system, and most humans will not look like that. This is somebody that needs significant help with energetically. And at this level, there are going to be physiological issues that are showing up at some point, if not now, very soon, right? And so just to be clear, when we're looking at this information, this is specifically reading the energy of the body. And when we're reading the energy of the body, it's how the brain itself is directly allocating energy to the different endocrines, organs, body parts of the body itself, right? We're not reading physiological issues at this point. We are reading coherent and incoherent energy that is either in balance or out of balance, with too much energy or too little energy. There's 3 phases of energy in that way. I mean, obviously there's iterations of a spectrum: in balance, too much, too little, right? So, and with each of these, you can then dive in and get more data. So this right here is the actual scan. Actually, let me show you a better one. So, let me get into I'll get into a real human soon, but I want to show you guys what a totally balanced person looks like. So when I do the scan of the fingertips, this is the right hand on top, this is the left hand on bottom. And each of these here represents a different quadrant associated with the meridians on the body. Associated with the meridians specific to that right thumb, right forefinger, right middle finger, right ring finger, right little finger, right? And so this, if this was your scan, this is the actual photonic light being emitted from your body. This is not a cartoon. This is what you would look like, right? This is the Kirlian photography here. Now, what the scan initially shows up is you see these different phases of color. And so this is totally balanced fingers. And then I'm going to cruise through this so that we can get to an actual person. So with this, then we're also able to look at the chakras, or the energy centers, and where, people are always like, oh, it's this woo-woo metaphysical, whatever. They are real measurable systems in the body that are very, very important for regulating all of our systems, all of the systems in the body. Like this one, like as with meditation, and we're taught to bring the energy up through the root, the sacral, all the way up to the crown and to the top. What we're doing is we're creating balance in these different energy centers, because in order for enough energy to be able to get from here to here, all of these need to be in coherence. They need to be stable. When they're unstable, then you're going to get breaks in the energy. You're going to get short circuits. And by the time it gets to here, to here, to here, you're not going to have that free flowing of electricity. If you kind of think of a plug plugged into the wall and there's little short circuits, it doesn't have good grounding, for example. Like that's kind of an example of what that is. But when we're reading these specific energy centers of us, our chakras, or whatever term you want to use, this right here, this part of the scan is actually reading at the quantum level. This is not photonic, this is quantum. This is quantum frequency, the quantum waves. It's the only way that you can tune into these particular energy centers, right? for people that know acupuncture, like this area, I don't go into this area because I am not at this point trained in acupuncture, but this is specifically about the meridians, and it will go and directly reflect back where the energy is flowing and where it's blocked, right? Which is really super interesting. And so there's always information that displays down here to help you read more. This is the analysis of the stress in the body, energy, the organ balance or disbalance, also in the calibration of where I measure things to make sure that the calibration is accurate. This is the area diagram, and these numbers represent the amount of photonic energy in the system at that given time that the photo is taken. So when you think about these pictures, these scans that I take, think about it in the way of like there's a Bugatti that is like cruising down the highway at 180. And you want to take a photograph of this Bugatti, but if you only take one, you're probably going to get like it's just briefly at that period of time. And so if you want to have a bigger picture of that Bugatti, cruising by, you're going to want to have, take multiple pictures, 4, 5, 6 pictures to show kind of over time, what did that Bugatti look like cruising by at 180 miles per hour? So right here, when we take the picture of these chakras, when we do that discharge from the finger, this is a brief picture of energy that's moving all the time, right? And so anyway, these right here, cardiovascular system, the transverse colon, descending colon, right part of the heart. This right here is about the left side of the brain and what the left side of the brain, how the left side of the brain is allocating energy to each of these things. This is the right side of the brain and how the right side of the brain is allocating energy to the cerebral zone, the jaw, the teeth, descending colon, right kidney, spine. So think of this like as a cell phone. Your cell phone, you have it charged up to 100%, and you go and look at the apps. And we can look at each of the apps. You can see how much energy each of the apps is taking from the memory of the phone, right? So you're looking at the apps, right? The apps of our human physiology or kind of the apps of a phone. And so when you look here on the energy diagram, this shows the actual energy reserve that we currently have in our body. And again, this is a calibrated one. This is not a real person, but this is so that you guys can, again, see what is balanced. What does balance look like? Optimal energy here, balance, this is optimal in this range. This is just showing that the energy of the room and how it's calibrating is a little outside of optimal in that way. But right here, what's important is the energy reserve. Here is super interesting. And when I show you some scans, what this is showing is how the brain is allocating energy to the nervous system connected to the organs, impacting the organs and body parts of the body. And whether it's sympathetic or parasympathetic, where are these areas most heavily weighted at the time? Organ energy, this is where you can go in and it just breaks down more and so Cindy's here, cool, where you can just break down more and more information about each of these areas. And it's just it's different ways to get more data to see where the information is coming from. And again, this is the scan specifically of the left thumb. And again, each of these are about the quadrants or the meridians, right, of that is being scanned. And then here is the data about that particular area of the scan. Again, there's the fingers. You can generate a full report, and these reports are 20 some odd pages, and they're just amazing. So now we're going to go and look at a person. So we've all seen what balance looked like. And Candyman, who I was saying earlier, he is a Qigong master. This man, he can sense unique individual energy from half a mile away. He could sense you, Johnny. He could sense you, Tom. And he could read your energy. And what's interesting about healers that that one of the big parts of the discussion was that people who work in energy and people that do this kind of work in the quantum level, what this is showing is absolutely how, oh, somebody's here. Wow, there's a lot more people than I was expecting. What this is showing is how imbalanced our energies become if we are not hyper aware of really who and what we are and where our boundaries connect and disconnect, and how we are impacted by other people, other people's energies, and how we give too much away, and if we don't take care of ourselves, right? So this again, this is an energy field that has a lot of challenges to it. So right here, these are called shootouts. Or, if we were in any other country but the United States, like this bio-well system is medical technology. It is considered medical technology in Russia, which is where this came from. What this would be under the medical terms in another country is called inflammation. It's the level of inflammation that you're seeing in the body. But to stick with, United States standards to be able to continue using this, you have to talk in different languaging. And so we call them shootouts or imbalances. The shootouts show too much energy, simply put, too much energy. Here, as you can see this dip, that is not enough energy as it's going in. So again, way out, moving in, there's not a lot of balance here at all. This is what a balanced energy body looks like, the photonic light emanating. This is what highly, highly imbalanced. So as you can see, this red is going around each of these things, and what it's highlighting different areas. So specifically, we'll look here. When I click on that shootout, it is looking at this specific quadrant or area of the left little finger, just right here. And what it's showing us is showing us a lot of information, but it's showing us specifically how the brain is allocating energy to the left part of the heart, the left kidney, the respiratory system, jejunum, right part of the heart, and the coronary vessels. And here, these numbers are what are important to us. What's the most interesting? It's energy. And the energy is measured in this system by joules. And so when you're thinking of what does this mean? How do I understand this? The energy is rated on a scale of 1 to 10. 4 to 6 is healthy, balanced energy. Anything, even 0.1 above 6, is the brain is allocating too much energy. Anything below 4.0, 3.9 and below, the brain is not able to allocate enough energy. And so if you want to think of this in a physiological term, that most people understand, if you think of a thyroid, think of hypo and hyper, hyperthyroid, the brain is going to be, it's ultimately, once it's manifested into a physiological system, the brain is driving too much energy to that place, trying to create balance in entropy. Entropy is chaos, right? And so if you have a hypothyroid, that is indicative of the brain not able to give enough energy to that area. Now, again, when we're looking at all of these scans, what we're not looking at physiological systems. We're looking specifically at how much energy that the brain is allocating to these different parts of the body at that time. Now, there are ways to look at these scans to see, is this an acute issue that is happening just now in passing time? Like most people have shootouts on their butts because we all sit too much. And so our butts are, the energy going through our butts and our colon and that area, it gets disrupted. So most people have shootouts on the butt. And for most people, that would be an acute issue. But this requires multiple scans over time to determine, is this an acute issue, or is this shootout, this level of shootout or not enough energy, is this something that is here all the time, right? So say we were to do 4 scans, we would look at 4 scans and what is here 75% of the time. If something is here 75% of the time, then it's showing this is a chronic issue. And as a chronic issue or chronic energetic issue, again, we have to always go back to that. If this is a chronic energetic issue of how the brain is effectively or ineffectively allocating energy to that part of the body, you will know that over time, that that significant imbalance of energy will then ultimately manifest into physiological symptoms. So all disease, all imbalances start at this core level of energy in the body. It doesn't start in the physical. It starts with energetic disruptions in the body. So right here on this one area that we were looking at, all of his numbers are in range except for his respiratory system and his jejunum. So as you can see, this is 6.76 and this is 6.50. And what did I say earlier? I said balanced energy is between 4 to 6. So the brain is allocating too much energy to the respiratory system area. This has to do specifically with the photonic light that is being measured in that area. So this is just showing the brain is sending too much energy to that space. Here we'll look, this is looking at the left thumb. And specifically, we're looking at this quadrant of the left thumb. And when we look into information, what we're seeing, again, the energy is measured in joules. The energy is too low, going to his left ear, nose, maxillary sinus, his cerebral zone, his cerebral cortex. It's only at 3.59. And so when I did these scans, and again, for those of you who just joined, what we're looking at here, these are the scans of a master, a Qigong master that I met down in Florida a couple weeks ago, right? And so he'd been doing healing after healing after healing for the last few days, and he asked me to scan him. And what this is showing is his energy systems are so out of balance right now. They're so out of balance. And he felt that he has become imbalanced because of the incredible draw of other people on his energy systems, which that goes to boundaries and a whole lot of other things that are complicated. But just leave it to say right here, these are low energy points. These are things to consider. Are these, what is going on? And we would want to take, if he was a client, I would want to have a baseline of 4 scans to see, are these numbers consistent over 4 scans? If they're consistent, 75% of the time, then we are looking at a chronic issue versus an acute issue. And so, again, for those of you who just joined, guys, what we're looking at, this is a calibration of what the optimal energy field of a human being would look like. And the energy field is the photonic light that's being emitted from that person, that shows literally the baseline of health in that individual. This is a prime example of an energy field that is, the easiest way to say it, it's disintegrating and will have significant health issues, even though he's a, highly trained Qigong master. And then there's other scans, other people. This is a friend of mine who's been dealing with some thyroid and other challenges. So most people are not balanced. Most people don't even know how imbalanced their energy fields actually are. And what's common on most people, the majority, is these are going to show thyroid area. And this is one, thyroid right here. Almost all people have issues with their thyroid. And the thyroid, a big reason because of that, it's kind of a filter. It's a filter for what is going on in the environment. It's not, it deals with like, how do we speak? How do we process our emotions? Things like that. But on the physiological level, it's what are we filtering or not filtering from the environment? And when it shows up regularly, thyroid on people, and then it also shows up in these other areas in the rectum and in the spine, in the descending colon. This right here says this person needs a detox like right away, at a minimum, requires a detox. Starts with the thyroid, shows up down here, in the butt. These are called shootouts, guys. And almost all people, as I was saying, have these shootouts because we live a sedentary lifestyle where we sit on our butts all the time. But this is also showing the energetic disruption that happens in this area by having the lifestyle that we have. Like hers is the least amount. Like I know Kimberly, she stands most of the day, but she still has shootouts on her butt. Like it's a thing. Like that's the calibration. So it's super common. Michelle, she does a lot of Reiki and she stands up a lot. So hers is one of the least that there is. Me, there's me, like I have a whole lot of stands I could show you. There's my kid, my husband, he's an engineer, he sits on his behind all the time. Like it's just interesting how this information shows up. So this is my daughter and she's only 13, so it scans differently. It scans for a child's perspective, as you can see just the body type changed there. Okay, so moving on, here's where it also gets really interesting. This is where it's measuring the energy centers in the body, so-called the chakras, which many people think are something that don't actually exist, but they are real, they are measurable, they are absolutely crucial to the entire functioning of the body. With this system, this is not measuring, as I said earlier, the photonic energy. This is measuring at the quantum level. This is quantum wave, quantum frequency of these energy centers. And visually, you are familiar with them. Ideally, this is where you get your chakras through meditation, through just being in coherence in your life. This is where they stabilize, right? This here shows right at that moment in time how these energy centers were moving. Like all of the chakras, all of the energy centers, they are always on a spin, and they're always moving from around like this. Like they're always moving in a circular fashion. And what this graph is showing here, it's showing in the green, this is the ideal measurement of how far these energy centers are moving right or left. When you get out of this, you're getting into incoherence. Here you're more here you're more coherent, right? And within these energy centers, there's data to be gleaned also, and I'll show you that in a minute. But right here, going down through the center of the body, this is talking about the introvert, your inner emotions towards oneself and home. When your energy centers are on this side, at that moment in time, these energy centers are literally being pulled to your internal world, to what is going on deepest inside of you. That absolutely can be impacted by external factors, but it's where is that rumination happening in your energy body, in your energy systems? And is this in a place of where they can flow and move freely, or is this a place where they get stuck? So here, what's interesting about him is, as I said, he'd been doing lots and lots of healings. Almost all of his energy centers, well, at least 4 of them, right, are pulled into the extrovert area, social life towards others and work. They're being pulled to the external world, to the factors that influence outside of himself. And all of us, they're moving all the time, all around. And they're always being impacted internally or externally, but it's how balanced are they? And I'll show you, I'll do a layered scan in a little bit and show you kind of how you see them moving over time. But when I talk about the data that's inside of them, you can click on it and each one will show the amount of energy or joules. This is where it is connecting to kind of the photonic light and the amount of energy that the brain is allocating to that energy center. In his crown, he is balanced within 4.8. And for him, if we were to go through this and talk about, like, here's the keywords of cosmic perception, super consciousness, unity, light, creativity, collective mind, whatever, there would be things about this that would come up for him, or if this was your scan, that would make sense for you. So the physical aspects of what this is representing is the brain, the pineal gland, skin, reproduction, hormonal balance, functional manifestations, about abstract or philosophical thinking. And it's about the chakras and how they're described, that you've seen them. It's very relevant to how they function in the body. And the significance of this chart over time is it will show the balance or imbalance of your energy centers. And that is your thoughts and your emotions and how they are the core aspect of all balance in your body. Our thoughts, our emotions create our reality. They create your identity. And if these are out of balance, incoherent, we're going to have a personality and a reality that is incoherent and challenged as well, physiologically, psychologically, emotionally, like all of the different aspects of things. So I will show you mine because I've done just a variety of scans on me, and I can layer them. So let me see here. 1 second. I want to see if there's anything in comparison. No. Okay. So these I did just a couple weeks ago, and I need to do some recent scans on myself. But here, actually, before I do all of that, these are in order. So at 12:18 on this, these are all in the second. So timing 12:18, 14:29, 7:10, 10:30, 14:18, and 7:47. So this is showing you how my energy centers were moving in real time. So my first scan I did was there, and you can see that they're within the green, but they were very much about what's going on in my inner world right through here. This was pretty balanced, but a little bit pulled to the external world and the impacts of that. My next scan, just a few minutes later, my energy centers have moved, and they're in a very, fairly coherent place. For me, historically, my heart energy center, it is the most out of balance. This is where I personally need to work on my boundaries and how I am impacted and pulled by external factors in my internal world, and creating more balance in how this energy center impacts my overall reality and personality. Like for me, what the heart would be, like as you can see, actually, see how big this one is in comparison to the others. You can see that the brain is allocating more energy than it should at this time, just because of the size. And at that point, I was at 7.1 joules. It doesn't mean that I'm sick. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. It just means that's my brain's focus at the time. When it would show something that was an issue to consider would be when that is consistently big all the time. And so this is, specifically for me, for anybody, but in my world, it makes a lot of sense. Dealing with love, kindness, compassion, harmony, obligation, responsibility, empathy, love for one's neighbor, and decision, physical aspects, cardiovascular system, circulation of blood, lungs, thyroid, mammary glands, functional manifestations, love to oneself and others, tactile sensitivity through the motor activity of nerves, capability to obtain the desirable. An effect from working with this chakra or energy center for creating balance is dealing specifically with feelings and emotions, control, self-control, wisdom, inner strength, overcoming obstacles and difficulties, acquiring confidence, an ability to harmonize the surroundings, acquiring power over oneself, equipoising of yang and yin, harmonization of the intention and action, development of creative inspiration. And when, in discussing that, it's where are you? Where am I on that scale? Do I have too much feelings of emotions and control or overcoming obstacles? Do I have too little, or am I balanced? Or you or whoever were to have that scan, right? So anyway, in real time, here we go. These were throughout the day. And you can see how my energy centers are moving. And over time, that during this day, mine were imbalanced I was doing a lot of studies. This was when I was going through my training, and I was very focused on my internal world and integrating all of this information that I was learning. And so what you're literally seeing photographs with the quantum level of my energy centers moving. And they're moving back and forth. And ideally, over time, what you want to see is these energy centers moving gracefully back and forth. If you have one that stays all the time on the right-hand side in the green, it's literally an area that the energy is not flowing through. It's stuck. You have a chakra, an energy center that needs balancing. And so here we go. I will show you how these things can be layered, which is another just view. Like there's just different ways to view things over time. And right here is how you can see this is what my energy centers were doing that day for those however many scans I had here, 5, 6, 7 scans. And when the more scans you have, the more you can layer in this way, the more data you have, the greater your perspective of what is imbalance, what is out of balance, how is energy being allocated over time. And it's super interesting. So for me, I'm pretty balanced here. I'm less balanced here. Like all of my chakras really could use a little work at least during this week. But you can see just where they pause, where the pictures are. But being that they are predominantly in the green, my chakras are pretty well balanced. This one the energy could move more. It could stand to move more. This one is an area that it's balanced. It's 4.4 joules, but I could always, increase the amount of energy connected to that area. And here you can see the energy fields over time also, where you can see like if we're looking for energy balances or imbalances, what tracks all the time together, right? What pattern is regularly there over time? And so you can see with me, thyroid area in my throat. And so what's interesting for me in my thyroid is that this in January, I had a full thyroid panel with my naturopathic doctor. And nothing comes up for me about my thyroid. But in energy medicine, with my my TCM doctor, which is all frequency-based medicine, in Body Talk, and even with Candyman, the Qigong master, when he came to me, he immediately went to my throat. I have stuck energy here. It's not showing up physiologically at this point where there's any measurable data for naturopathic functional, endocrinologists, but I have an imbalance in my energy and how much energy my brain is currently allocating to this area. And so, it's interesting, like for me on this day, I have 8.6 joules of energy that's being allocated to the thyroid. And this is something that I practice energy medicine and I understand these scans, that it's important to me to figure out how to be able to move this energy through my body, how to be able to move this energy through my thyroid and my throat and my trachea, so that this does not ultimately manifest as something physiological, a chronic issue. But there is zero data back that says that there's anything at all wrong with me, right? And so that's what I mean, like we're looking at the energy systems versus the actual physiology. Now, a doctor, an endocrinologist, a neurologist could absolutely use this technology to see, to use their information, their data. How does this correlate to the work that they're doing? And being a trained specialist in a certain area, then you absolutely can start seeing physiological issues that are transpiring by looking at the energy systems of the body. So again, this is for people that know acupuncture and the meridian specifically. I don't, so I just kind of skip over that area. For me, right here on the scan, this is showing the amount of overall stress in my body, not stress of like in my head, but the energetic stress in my body. And it's showing I'm 3.0, so I'm in the optimal range. The energy, my overall energy was heightened that day. There was like 30 people in the room. I was optimal, slightly heightened, 60.52. Then this shows organs that are balanced or disbalanced. And organs to show up balanced or disbalanced show up with, within a 20% range of how close they are to being I'll show you on another diagram what that means. And then right here, the average disbalance of energy connected with my organs or joules. And so in looking at this analysis, if we jump over here to the organ, to the organ energy, this is where I was talking earlier about how you can measure the sympathetic and parasympathetic dominance or responses in an individual. This chart here is showing how the brain, how much energy the brain is allocating at that moment in time to the sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system, impacting the cardiovascular system, the heart, the colon, all these different areas of the body, right? And so on this day, what this is showing with my imbalances, like on number 7 is the thyroid gland. It's showing that on the left side of my brain, the imbalance is the left side of my brain is allocating the most amount of energy to my thyroid area that day. But it's a 20% difference from the right side of my brain, right here, that is showing sympathetic, this is showing parasympathetic dominance. So left side is showing sympathetic, which is green. Blue is showing parasympathetic. So what you can see from this scan of just these four areas, that on this day, I don't have a sympathetic or parasympathetic dominance in specific, but you can just see how my brain was allocating energy over time, or allocating energy to the nervous system. Now, I will show you something that's super interesting. Like for individuals who deal with chronic illness, or they're dealing with issues, they're always highly fatigued. They don't feel well. They know that they're sick, but they go and they have scans, blood tests, all the things with all the doctors, and all the results come back, but you're healthy, so you're probably just a hypochondriac. This is a prime example of somebody who has what is called parasympathetic dominance. And with parasympathetic dominance, overall, like what it's showing is all of these scans came back normal. They feel horrible, but there aren't any other systems available to actually show what is going on underneath the hood. And when you have parasympathetic dominance, that means that your nervous system is stuck in the rest and digest mode. And everything in life is about balance. Too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing. Too little of a good thing becomes a bad thing. You need it to be in balance. But when somebody is in parasympathetic dominance all the time, then all of these energy systems are going to be coming out of balance within the body. Maybe not measurable on the physiologic side, on the physiological side in traditional medicine for what they see, but this right here says the brain is not functioning at its highest capacity. The parasympathetic nervous system is always on and probably working, doing quantum medicine, energy medicine, or working with a neurologist or somebody that can literally work with the nervous system on that side of things. Like sometimes it's necessary to bring in traditional medicine, sometimes it's not, but it's just parasympathetic and parasympathetic. And you can have sympathetic dominance also. Somebody who has, super high anxiety all the time, and they're like just kind of, we all have met people who are like just kind of tweaked out, and most likely what's going to show is that they have this sympathetic dominance and that the brain is highly imbalanced in how it's allocating that energy. And so here we go. For this person that we were looking at, she's in her early 50s. This measures from her age, and you can see the green right here is the optimal area of where her brain should be allocating, of where these spikes should be. This red line here is indicative of it's reading the energy systems in her body, the energy, and it's showing these different shootouts. So her body is out of balance here significantly. Left side of the brain, right side of the brain. Right side of the brain is allocating a lot of energy to the blind gut, to the liver, to her mammary glands. But here, as I was talking earlier about the battery on the cell phone, the energy reserve is 100%. So her energy overall is 100. But when you look here, and we look at the optimal area and how the brain is allocating energy, this is like looking at the cell phone, like I said earlier, and these are all the different apps that are open. And the app of the mammary glands and the respiratory system is showing it has a significant draw in the left side of the brain, and the energy that the brain is dedicating to that area, or to the liver. This is showing the area of the photonic energy that's being emitted and drawn. And so it's just interesting because you're able to see the balance and imbalance very distinctly here. Even though she's running at 100%, the brain is working really, really hard to try to bring coherence into these different aspects of the body systems. So let's see, I showed you that organ energy. So here we go. Biorhythms. Now, this is an entirely separate program that's part of the bio-wel. And this is based on when you were born. And the biorhythms are your literal rhythms of your entire life. And it shows your physical, your emotional, and your intellectual cycles, when you're going to be at your peak and when you're going to be at your lowest. And so if looking at the physical cycle of this person, what we would be looking at is that at the beginning of March, she started at a peak of her physical cycle. But when we got down to the 11th of March, this is when she's physiologically at her lowest energy point of her natural biorhythms in her life. And if she were to be having surgery, this would be a time she wouldn't want to have surgery, because it would be a more difficult surgery. It would take more time to heal. The recovery time would take longer, and more potential complications could happen. But if she were to plan the surgery to here, when it's 0 or above, this is her constitution. This is her actual physical health cycle and vitality. It would be peaking on this day. And so she would want to plan surgery between 0 and 100. Anything below 0 and down, that's a decline in that state of her being. Right here, it's also showing her intellectual cycle. Her intellectual cycle peaks here on the 23rd of March-ish, and it starts declining. So in being able to look at the intellectual cycles, you wouldn't want to be making big decisions when you are below 0. Anything below 0 shows that you're on a decline of your natural constitution. And I mean, not that you couldn't make decisions in this area, but when you're down here, your ability to truly think and reason and make rational, good decisions about really important things will be impacted. It will be impacted. So there's so many different ways to look at this. Emotionally, regulation peak here on the 14th, lowest on the 28th. And the cool thing that you can do with these biorhythms is, say, for example, me and my husband, I wanted to compare my biorhythms to him. How similar are we in our natural cycles of life? And I did that recently, and it turns out we're 2/3 different. Our intellectual cycle is very similar, but our physical and emotional cycles are completely opposite. And so for relationship dynamics and complications, when people don't know, what people don't know can actually hurt them. And like a lot of our arguments and things that have caused us problems literally have come because we're at different points of our life cycle during the month. And so being able to recognize this and bring a conscious awareness to the fact that we cycle differently, it enables us to have a different level of communication and understanding about one another. And this, Tom, is where you can start looking into corporate dynamics and teams and all sorts of stuff. And there's other technology that I'll be bringing in, not today, to even demonstrate that even more. But so this is really interesting, and this can map out an entire year of your biorhythms of your life. And again, for those who weren't here earlier, these are finger scans. So this is this gal who has the parasympathetic dominance, and her finger scans are very different than what the calibrated one, just from the system to get the calibration started. You can see they're very, very balanced. And then when you look at hers, you start seeing more little shootouts in these areas. Or we'll look here at Candyman. you can see significant shootouts on his, right? And on his pinky fingers, right here, you can see in all this orange, this is congested energy that's not flowing through these meridians properly. And the right and left hands typically mirror one another for the most part. This right here on the left forefinger, it's going to show that there's challenges going on in prostate, in the rectum, in that area of the body, energetically, not physiologically, right? Energetically. So again, this is balanced. This is imbalanced. This is balanced, and I'll show you another man. This is imbalanced. And so what's interesting about these two men, and I think that their age bracket was similar, is this area down here is the energy of the area is deteriorating somewhat. And so that means that it would be good to look at these systems on the energy level and on the physiological level to see, are there any actual symptoms showing up on the more traditional side, or is this something that, really needs to be addressed with food, lifestyle, mental health, how we think and how we feel. So yeah, and so then the last thing is this can also, not the last thing actually, this can also generate a 20 some odd page report that discusses all of this information and more. And so the last thing too about the chakras is that another thing that's really cool is there's a tool I can get called the bio-cor, and it's specifically for meditation, and it works with the pineal gland. And this generates music that is specific to where the chakras, your energy centers are. And the music will bring your chakras, your energy centers into more coherence, into balance. And it's specifically generated for that individual at that time. And they demonstrated this at the training that I was at. And this woman who they had her, she had a lot of anxiety about being up at the front of the room. And, that was probably the last place she wanted to be, but she offered to go. And so they did the scan, looked at her chakras, downloaded this music file, played it through the bio-cor. The bio-cor music runs for 10 minutes total. And she was just at the front of the room in front of 30 people. She ended up getting lost in her own world. And when it was done and came back to kind of discuss what happened, the first thing she said was that she felt like her heart energy center, her heart chakra, like exploded open. And for those individuals who are really dialed in to meditation, to having the energy move through the entire system, to have this experience of a heart energy center exploding in a good way, not a bad way, that is a life-changing experience about how much energy has been released and is now able to be reallocated back into the body. So there's all this other technology that's just really super cool that can be integrated with this. So I'm going to stop screen sharing now. And if anybody's still here that wants to ask any questions, feel free. So hi. Hang on. Oh, how do I unmute you? Can you unmute yourself, Tom?
Yeah.
So, any thoughts or ideas? Anything you guys wanted to comment on?
It was extremely interesting, especially I was going to ask you about the meditation before and after, and you brought that up. So, and I assume you've been trying that out on yourself. And
meditation in general, yes. I don't have the bio-cor yet. I'm going to be getting that, plus Sputnik and other things that go along with the system.
But even without the bio-cor, measuring your chakras before and after the meditations, you can see the alignment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The bio-cor just enhances, right? It enhances the whole experience with that.
Yeah, and I think I told you, like, when I saw the bio-well demonstrated at the biohacking conference, and I know this is probably interesting for you, Gary, they did it, and then they had someone like put their hand inside one of those quantum, I can't remember which technology it was, Layla or something, but then after just like 5 minutes, and then they remeasured, and you could see like a better alignment. But yeah, so it was, yeah, it's very, very, very interesting. And I have to say, like, when you're talking about the like parasympathetic dominance and things like that, and I'm also like, my pharmacy brain is also thinking, like, I also wonder like what medications they're on that might be centrally acting that can,
Mhm.
play a role. Of course, there's only so much as a coach that you can do legally.
Well,
But
the
it makes
medications,
them
oh, sorry,
asking
go ahead.
questions. Yeah, it's like at least things that they may want to consider and maybe ask their primary doctor about. Because this is what I'm just thinking, all the people that are on, SSRIs, antidepressants, yada, 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 it's got to have an effect on your nervous system.
Absolutely. And so so you can do stress tests with this system that will show, is this drug or food or crystal or whatever increasing your energy, decreasing your energy, or moving you into balance, coherence. So, but most specifically about the pharmaceutical side is thinking thyroid is the easiest one because it's easiest to understand and see. That if you have somebody that you're working with and we were to do a scan and their thyroid and they have thyroid issues and they're taking whatever medication for their thyroid, and their scans, like we do the 4 or 5 scans to show like the percentage, like is this acute or chronic, we would be able to tell if that medication is working or not working. Because if their energy in their thyroid is between 4 and 6, then the medication is working for them consistently. If that energy of the thyroid is 4.1 or above or 3.9 or below, then that medication is not working for them, because the medication should bring them into as close to homeostasis as possible. And as a coach, that is something that you could talk to your clients about. I mean, you could say, from these readings, from these scans, from these 4 scans, 75% of the time, your thyroid is out of balance. We know that you're taking this medication. This is showing that it would be a good idea to have your medication, adjusted, or maybe you take the same medication, but a different brand. Like everything's, the nuances. I don't have to tell you, you're a pharmacist, right? But then you could even do the stress testing with them, like these stress testing, muscle testing, like you've heard of. Stress testing will give you data back that demonstrates this thing that I am ingesting is increasing, decreasing, or balancing me. And it shows right there, is this working or not? And it's not just one scan. Like with a stress test, we do multiple scans, again, because you want to have cumulative data to show this is true or this is not true. But yeah, it's